Hello, I am Montserrat Cano, and this is SEO in 2025.
Montserrat, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
My number one tip for 2025 is conduct a thorough international market and competitor research before crafting your localized marketing strategies.
Got you. Okay, so conduct thorough international research. You're talking about competitor research as well. I've also heard you talk about both primary and global markets and how this works in both different scenarios. So why is it important and why does it work both internationally and for local markets?
It works. This is really important in this day and age because at this moment in time, our customers and target audiences are demanding personalized experiences. So it's no longer valid to just think about an idea and think, okay, well, let's just spend this money or let's just move on globally with our own strategies and our own tactics. Brands need to stop and think before they actually do, because the competition has increased both online and offline. And so it's really important that brands get to know their audiences as much as possible so that they can communicate with them in the best way possible, really. And that means that they need to understand not just the language that they use, but also what they expect to find, what kind of content, what kind of format they need to use. It works both in global markets, but also in your primary markets, because, things change all the time. It is not exactly right now. Things are not exactly right now how they used to be in the past, and they will not be exactly in the same way next year. So conducting a thorough market research and also competitor research will actually keep your feet on the ground as to what you need to do. From my point of view, there are three reasons so that you can understand the importance of conducting a competitor research and a market research further. The first one is that you need to avoid bias and fallacies. Both of them are different. Fallacies are more errors in judgment, whereas biases are more to do with our own preferences. And both of them are so deeply rooted in our psyches that we don't even realize that we have fallen trap or thinking the way we are thinking. And so, unfortunately, we can't make any business decisions based on ideas that we have gathered from maybe from a holiday in Italy, in France, in the UK, in Spain. We need to deeply understand the behavior that we have seen so that we can move on with our business and be successful and resonate with our audiences. This was the first reason.
Avoiding fallacies. Let's just explore that in a little bit more depth. So why is it important to identify that? I mean, does everyone have fallacies? But also, how do you go about identifying that? Is it necessary to conduct face-to-face or direct research with your customers or potential customers, or can you do this digitally?
You can, definitely. There's different ways to conduct research. There's primary data. You have to gather basically two different types of data. There's on the one hand primary data and then secondary data. Primary data is the kind of data that you actually gather yourself from your own tests, A/B tests, for example. Things that, I don't know, maybe you are trying to expand into a market, any market, and you don't know whether it is going to work. So maybe you just go with maybe one product or two products out of your whole portfolio of products to see how that works. That is a test that you can undertake, and all the data that you get is something that you can feed your strategy on, because maybe if something has gone well, maybe the rest will go well, and the other way around. You definitely don't know. That's one thing.
So the second point after fallacies, what you're going to cover there?
The second point is about knowing the unknowns, things you don't really know about, but they are there. Or maybe things that you actually know, but you didn't realize they were important. And this is especially important when you are talking to other people in a different market, because their cultural perspectives will be different from yours. And cultural relevancy is something that is becoming a lot more important these days if you want to craft that strategy. Really is important. It goes beyond language. It goes beyond just using a particular language. Think about multilingual countries such as Spain, where there are 4 different co-official languages. Switzerland, where there's 3, as far as I know. No, 4 actually. You need to find out which language people are using to find out about, say, financial services, or whether it is worth launching in a different language in that market. Is it useful? Yes or no? But you need to find out. There is also a third point, which is segmentation. Because once you actually get that data, you will be able to segment your target audience so that you are able to communicate, brands are able to communicate well with all of them. And so with, with things like, for example, the content formats. We know that Germans do like checklists, but do they all work all the time for everything?
Germans like checklists. There's the statement for you.
Well, that's what I've seen. That's what I have experienced. Whereas in other markets, perhaps they like it. They like a little bit more context, so that those checklists are more palatable. And I'm thinking perhaps the French and the Spanish markets as well. So those are the things that we need to take into account, particularly because at this moment in time, on each market, there will be what we call a messy middle, something which is unique, a gap between discovery and purchase. And that is something that we need to crack the code so that you are able to understand what is the purchase behavior on each market, their search behavior as well. So, for instance, I have worked in some Latin markets where some technology brands were ranking for customer service and related terms, whereas different but similar brands were ranking for other types of search terms in other markets, simply because perhaps they are different. You see, what I meant to say is that I have worked in the Latin countries where technology brands were ranking for special terms such as customer service, etc., which most brands would actually rank at the very beginning when they are not being well known, when the market is not too solid or too mature. Whereas similar brands would be ranking, for other types of products in other markets, simply because they are more mature, you see. So you have to take into account different bits and pieces, not just the culture, but also the digital maturity of every country that will make brands being searched for and ranked for different types of terms. We need to find out why that is happening.
Got you. Okay. So completely understand the need to be more localized with your thinking, of understanding local markets, of perhaps even building personas for local markets as well. Because just because the people with the same rough age, lifestyle, income are going to be purchasing your products, it doesn't mean that they're going to be wanting to consume your content in the same way. So if you can produce experiences that are more relevant and relatable for them, then hopefully your conversion rates will move higher. And in terms of measuring the impact of what you're doing, I mentioned conversion rates. How do you go about ensuring and measuring that what you've actually been focusing on actually has an impact on the bottom line?
Same as usual. I make sure that I align whenever I do any marketing campaign, or I start an SEO project. I make sure that I align with marketing and business needs, and I understand what I am trying to find out, what I'm trying to measure. But to be able what I'm trying to measure, then I will need to understand the market per se. So then I benchmark against those initial thoughts, initial businesses to see how they have influenced the bottom line. Really, there's nothing special there. It's nothing out of nothing out of the ordinary. But I really want to make sure that everybody understands that we need to know the specifics of each target market, of each target audience, to be able to understand that. So I'll give you an example. Imagery for a specific campaign. I know some retailers are using the same type of images in the north of the country and in the south of the country for the same campaign, where people do search and behave very differently, because obviously the country, and I'm thinking about Spain, being very varied in terms of landscape, in terms of weather, etc., people will behave in different ways.
So sorry, just jump in here for a second. I mean, that's a market that you know and you understand, and you're saying you know that, and that's wonderful that you know that, and you know how to alter your communication styles maybe in different parts of the same country, if that's possible to do online. But how do you go about researching and determining and getting the data for markets that you don't know of?
There's different processes. Like I said before, there's primary data and secondary data, which I started to talk about earlier. So you can do primary research just by focusing on the usual focus groups. Perhaps you can get groups of people from that country to talk to you about a specific bits and pieces, or something you want to launch online. You can get perhaps somebody to test it there for you. Yeah, that's primary research. Secondary research, or even you can use online tools such as SimilarWeb, perhaps, etc. Not just to try and see how things are working there in that specific country. Now, there's also secondary data. Secondary data is data that you already find published, and it can be published by a variety of sources and institutions, such as the European Union, the European Commission, papers that I check quite frequently because they've got very good studies that are related to e-commerce on buyer behavior, etc. Tools sometimes publish very good studies as well, and or even institutions such as the Pew Research Center do actually very good research. The issue with secondary data is that you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because that data, those studies have been published for a variety of purposes that are beyond your purpose. It's nothing to do with you, but you can use that to start investigating, to start researching. For example, a few months ago, Pew Research Center published some data on content decay online. And when I read those results, they were very interesting, and they do a fantastic job generally. But when I read that particular study, I thought that was very peculiar, and it was very clear to me that they had not consulted with a specialist. So that is the reason why you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. One of the first things that you or every brand needs to think about is using the most appropriate data sources and expertise. Even when we speak the language, if we are not in the country or we don't have advanced knowledge of that market, we might miss things, or we might actually stumble on something that is interesting, but we don't have enough understanding of the language or the cultural norms to be able to say, go deeper into that. And this is where somebody who with a deeper understanding of that language and that market can actually help you out. It really is very important that you consult with them.
So how often should you be doing this? Is this just a one-off project or something that you have to do on an ongoing basis?
I would say on an ongoing basis.
How often?
Yeah. There's different ways to do this. I mean, a big project a big project can actually be undertaken maybe once a year or once every so often, depending on the situation. So, for example, say that you want to expand to another country, or you want to think, you want to see how things are going on in a specific target market that you are already operating on. Then you need to check that every so often. Perhaps not every month, but maybe once a year. That would be good. However, this approach will actually be very useful on an ongoing basis. So if you have that research mindset already there, you can actually check things a bit more in depth, so that you are able to uncover different bits and pieces. For example, do you know Klarna, the payment company? They wanted to expand into the Belgian market with a specific project or specific product. I can't remember what it was, the name, but the name sounded really odd to Belgians. And this is something they found out later, you see. But please bear in mind that you need to do this from time to time with a view to always implement findings and recommendations. It's a bit like an audit, like a website audit. Why doing something which takes such a long time if you're not going to be able to implement anything later on?
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
If somebody is struggling for time, they should stop and think to see what's exactly that is not working at that moment in time. I mean, for example, if they are not ranking for a keyword, or or certain URL is not ranking for them, they should stop and think, why is this not working? Think about the content, particularly if it is localized content. Is this understandable? Can somebody understand it well? Is it well written in that language? Perhaps you need to update it with more information, fresh information. Perhaps giving it to somebody from that specific market to read it properly can actually help you out with updating the content of the URL. It's about stopping and think and being very selective as to what you are doing, I think.
Montserrat Cano is an international SEO expert and project manager. You can find her over at montserrat-cano.com. Montse, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at seoin2025.com.